Hello and welcome, everybody. Hola. My name is Isabel Gonzalez Whitaker, and I'm with Moms Clean Air Force and Ecomadres. And you are joining an Ecocharla with an Ecomadre, a climate chat with Representative Justin J. Pearson, who I'm so excited to have here because he's my representative here in Memphis, Tennessee State District 86 in the House. Yay. I'm so excited. We are thrilled to be talking to you today. We want to touch on some of your history as a community organizer, specifically the work that you did with the community stopping a 45-mile long crude oil pipeline that was going to go through a historically marginalized neighborhood here in Memphis that would have polluted the water, polluted the air, and driven extremely negative health outcomes for a community that does not deserve to not have justice in every breath. We are also very familiar and proud of your work standing with the victims of gun violence in Nashville. And really, I just want to take this opportunity to thank you, Representative Pearson, for always centering your policy and your work on the well-being and health of children everywhere. So I've just introduced you a bit. I would like to take this opportunity to let you introduce yourself to our audience of Moms Clean Air Force and Ecomadres.
Well, thank you so much, Isabel. Thank you so much, Ecomadres, and thank you so much to the Clean Air Moms Force here, who is demanding that justice be part of the way that we operate in government, the way that we operate in our communities. I've been really fortunate to serve District 86 before being elected, and to your point, stopping a multi-billion-dollar crude oil pipeline and a community effort, because we deserve clean air, we deserve clean water, we deserve clean soil, and our communities have been denied access to that, particularly our Black, our Brown, and our Indigenous communities. Since the founding of this country, the inequity that has been institutionalized continues to hurt and to harm us. And in this moment in time, we have an opportunity, a responsibility, and an obligation to change that. From our community organizing to the work at the local level to the work that we do at the state level. I'm just really glad to be here to talk about that.
Well, we're glad to be walking this journey with you, Representative Pearson. So thank you for giving voice and action to the issues that are most important to us as we face climate change head on. I want to go back a little bit. I would love for you to share with us, what is an early memory that you have? So much of the work that we connect with in our careers and our professional lives are rooted in an early memory. And I'm curious, what is an early memory for you around the environment, around the beauty of the natural world growing up here in Memphis?
Yeah, I mean, I am fortunate. I'm from Westwood in Tennessee, where both of my grandmothers lived. I love them so dearly. They were the matriarchs of our family, and they instituted a sense of place, which is so important for any environmental justice fight, is to be connected and is to be rooted to the places where we come from, the places that we call home. You know, one of the kind of fondest memories that I have is actually my aunt and uncle being on the street outside on the 4th of July. They were a little younger then, racing down the street on Masterson. And our entire family was there. And what it does and what it reminds me of is these places, even after time has passed, my grandmothers, unfortunately, both have passed on from having cancer. You that a lot of the air pollution that is in the air reminds me that even as time passes, those places still hold value. They still hold the stories of our families. They still hold these memories for us. And for me, that connectedness to Westwood and to my community is something that has never left.
That's beautiful. You know, one of the things that I think that you have provided for the community that you fought so hard for against the Byhalia pipeline are those memories, right? Memories that are going to be preserved in the natural world, undisturbed as much as possible. Tell me, what did you learn about yourself in that very lengthy, very multi-stakeholder, multi-community coalition building movement?
Mm-hmm.
You obviously found success, but what did it mean to you personally? And what did you learn about what you're capable of?
I mean, what I learned is that we have the power to win. that our communities that build multiracial, multi-ethnic movements toward justice can be victorious in developing what Heather McGhee calls the solidarity dividend. Our communities that have been overlooked and have been deemed less powerful or voiceless do have power. They do have a voice that can demand change, and that when we work together, when we fight together, we have the capacity to win. When I think about my own personal journey, I do think about feelings of, inadequacy, that the task was too big, and the reality that my community lifted me, my family lifted me to believe in my own ability that we could be successful. And I think in these movements, it's really important that we realize that we all do have the capacity to create change. We all have the capacity to stand up for what we believe in. We all have the capacity to lift up the issues that are negatively impacting our community to make sure that the people who are being hurt the most are elevated. Like, that is something that exists within each and every one of us. It's not something that's innate or something that's special about the leaders of the movement or the elected officials. We all can do this. And in reality, for us to create the change that we need to see for a cleaner climate, for cleaner air, for us to breathe, it is going to take all of us being all in to create that transformation and change.
I totally agree with you. I would love for you to provide some words of wisdom to our community organizers on the ground when they might be feeling defeated. Even anything that you might have that's tactical or strategic, whether it's developing your own sense of resiliency for the path ahead, or actual strategies for engagement, and this movement of people power that you have built, and is so foundational to your work. If you can, distill some lessons for our community, I'd be grateful.
Yeah. Look, again, I think the first thing to realize is you have power. And the corporations and even some people in government will try to convince you and your community otherwise. And so it's really important that we remind ourselves of the intrinsic and internal strength that we have to endure, to change our circumstances and our situations that we find ourselves in. So recognize that. I think the second thing to realize is, as powerful as we are as individuals, we cannot do this work alone. That this work requires a community. It requires all of us gathering and working in concert and together to build this movement. I think back about the Byhalia pipeline, and it was the scientists, organizations, as well as the environmental justice organizations. It was the legal work of folks like the Southern Environmental Law Center, and it was the advocacy work of Memphis Community Against the Pipeline, now Memphis Community Against Pollution. Like, it is going to be organizations working in concert that ultimately lead to our successes. As we strategize as organizers on the ground, for me personally, some things that I do start with grounding. Every one of our meetings starts with prayer. We recognize that the fight that we are in is as important to us as it is to future generations, and that the work that we are doing is also bigger than us. And it is bigger than our time that we are going to be here sharing this planet, our shared home, as the Pope calls it. And so there's something about creating grounding in the spaces that we operate in work. Then it is realizing that we're going to have to be engaged in the political process. The politicians at the county commission or the city council or the state house at the federal level are directly impacting our lives. And we have to pay much more attention to what's going on at the state level in particular. But those things are impacting our lives. So we have to be politically engaged and informed so that we can help to create transformation. And those leaders have permits that they're approving. Those departments are given the green light to certain projects that might be negatively impacting our communities. And we know that our communities of color are the ones that are going to be impacted the most by these projects. And we have a responsibility of holding those elected leaders or those appointed leaders accountable. We have to realize that part of our strategy needs to be legal. The reality is there are some amazing environmental attorneys who can help bolster the work that we do in our communities with legal arguments about why we deserve clean air, the consequences of not prioritizing environmental justice. We need to use legal strategy in order to help us in our fight for resistance. And we cannot shy away from something that's really important, which is the social justice aspect of what we are doing. Speaking to the historical reality of discrimination and of injustice of our communities is not wrong, is not bad. It is part of our strength, it is part of our power, and we do not need to shy away from it because that is what motivates and invigorates our community, which knows that there's something wrong with everyone getting sick. We know that there's something wrong with a lot of our kids having asthma. We know that there's something wrong with all of the polluters who are in our they want that and not face consequences. And so we can mention the social justice aspect of what is happening. And then we have to have a indomitable spirit of hope. Look, this fight that we are in will not be won easily. It will not be won in the next month or the next year. It won't be won because of the next administration or this administration. It will be because we refuse to give up our hope for a better tomorrow, regardless of what the corporations do, regardless of what the politicians do. Our fight and our ability to remain steadfast and unmovable in our belief that everybody has the right to breathe is what's going to help us to win in the end.
I love what you're saying about, you know, so oftentimes we can get overwhelmed by oh, by the by the size of the problems and also the bureaucracy that's required to get work done. So you've really given us some inspiration in terms of how to be tactical in our approach. I too believe in the power of data to push arguments, especially irrefutably. As somebody who sits on your side and you meet with constituents and you meet with people that are coming to share their concerns, what can you share with us? What do you want us to know as we engage with lawmakers, which is so much of the work that we do is showing up in our in those halls of influence
Mhm.
to better connect with, to
Mhm.
better encourage, to really inspire them to really take seriously the climate fight ahead.
Mhm. Yeah, look, first, thank you for engaging by coming to the state houses, going into those halls of influence, as you mentioned there, Isabel, and being a part of the process. Too often organizations say, we're registering this many people to vote, or we're doing this to get folks out to participate. But participatory democracy, whether you have the ability to vote or don't have the ability to vote, is really what happens in between election day, right? It is the people who show up. It's the people who speak up. It's the people who hold signs, who wear the red shirts, right? That really do create a change of mind and ultimately a change of heart in elected officials. And so, as you all do this work, I think just a couple of things. One is looking at these months, realize that the elected officials need more uh, the lack of awareness, the lack of knowledge about this particular issue as it relates to climate, as it relates to environment, as it relates to air quality is real. And a lot of them are operating from a significant deficit in understanding. And so I would not go in with the expectation that they understand the issue. So I would go in with data, with information, and also with stories. And so it's really important to have the data to talk about the consequences of having these polluters in our community, to talk about the effect it's having to healthcare costs, to have to pay for kids who have asthma or to have a CPAP machine in your home. It's really important that we have the information and the statistics that support that, and also those stories, right? Because the consequences are real. They have been fatal in some incidents. They are real in the amount of children, Black and brown children, who are missing school because they're having to go to the doctor in order to get the lungs taken care of. These are realities that you and us and our community and our district here are experiencing. And so it's really important to have the data. And it's also really important to have the qualitative data, the stories that each and every one of us have about the consequences of pollution in our communities. I've shared about my grandmothers. I have an uncle who is on steroids to make sure that he can breathe. Another brother who has chronic asthma. And so this is real in our communities. And when you're going to legislators, being able to have both of those things are really important. And I think that maybe the most important thing to do is to stick with it. Some folks will not understand the first time. Some folks will seemingly not care the first time. But the responsibility of activists, the responsibility of people in our community, of those who care about justice, who care about the future, is to remain engaged and to keep showing up and to keep speaking up and to keep fighting for our communities because we are right. We are right to demand that everybody has a right to breathe. We are right to demand that everybody deserves the ability to go to their homes and not worry about toxins coming in. We are right to believe this. And I believe that our commitment that shows up in the state houses, our commitment that shows up at the city council and the county commission, it makes a difference for our communities.
I believe in the power of tenacity.
There you go.
Sometimes you have to be a little pushy to get things done, and you have to stick with it. So I believe that. Now, and I also believe in storytelling, and I also believe in bringing human stories to the issues, like you have so eloquently said. And that reminds me, because we're talking about all of these communities and the vulnerability these communities have in terms of their disproportionate impact from pollution. Now, a stat that you're probably aware of, and because it is Hispanic Heritage Month, I'd be remiss if we didn't spend a little bit of time talking about the Latino community in Tennessee, and more broadly, the percent of Latino children who are more likely to die from asthma is 40%, which is considerably more than the general population. And it speaks to, a lot of issues at play, both access to healthcare, but also proximity to those contributors to poor air quality. Mm-hmm. So knowing that the Latino community continues to grow in your district, I think it's now almost 10%, and that's sort of reflective of what's happening in the state. More broadly, 1 in 5 Americans, people living in the United States, are now Latino, and 1 in 4 children are Latino. What do you want to say to those communities around the importance of paying attention to these issues, and also convening for the movement ahead in terms of helping to stand in solidarity and also to helping advance these issues?
Mm-hmm. Yes, our Latino community is very important to Tennessee. It's important to our country's ability to operate, and our Latino community is suffering from systemic racism and systemic injustices that plague people of color in our country and in our state as well. And I believe the responsibility that first those who are elected have is to make sure that we are getting proximate to our Latino community, that we are doing everything that we can to understand these statistics better and the consequences. What we know to be true, and what you've already mentioned, was that our Latino communities are also on the front lines of environmental injustice fights, on the front lines of polluters being in their communities. And we have to do everything that we can to build power together. And so I think the work as we look ahead and as we think ahead is to build that solidarity and the recognition that for our Black communities to understand that the Latino community is experiencing very similar challenges, and that socioeconomically oppressed people who are Latino, who are Black, who are white, have much more in common than those who are seeking to do our community harm, and that we have to work collaboratively together to change things. That is not going to be one individual or one group that's going to do it. It's going to be how we work and combine our efforts. And I think when it comes to our Latino population growing in this state and across the country, we have to do an even better job at being more inclusive in the conversation when we talk about the issues of environmental and climate justice. And I do believe in the South in particular, the Latino community has been left behind in that conversation. And now is a moment in time for us to make sure we're reprioritizing the voices of our Latino community, and that everyone here in Ecomadres is showing up and demanding meetings with the state representatives, demanding meetings with the city, demanding meetings with the mayors, in order that your perspective and the perspective of this organization gets heard.
Well, I know that we like to hear that at Ecomadres and at Mom's Clean Air Force. We also like to say that we're fighting for justice in every breath. Can you tell me what you think justice in every breath means?
Mhm. Justice in every breath means that every child, every parent, every person, every grandparent is able to wake up in the morning and breathe freely, not worried about the toxins or the pollutants that might be in the air, not worried that this breath might contribute to cancer, not worried that this breath might lead to some tragic illness or trigger something within them that leads them to the hospital. Justice in every breath means truly that the idea of justice for all extends to our health and to our lives and to our ability to live full lives that God's intended for us to live.
Thank you so much, Representative Pearson, for your time today. I'm so excited that we get to share your voice with our community. We asked you to select one of our petitions to recommend to our followers to sign, and I did notice that it was the one that was very much localized to governors. So we hope to send strong messages, to your point, to not just the influencers at the federal level, but the influencers in our backyards. So encouraging everybody who's watching, you'll see a QR code in a minute pop up about that petition. Please sign, have your voice heard. It's super easy. And there is power in the collective, as we've learned today. And also learn more about what we do at Mom's Clean Air Force and Ecomadres, and follow the work of Representative Justin J. Pearson as he fights for justice in every breath. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gracias.